When you step back calmly, something almost invisible happens. The entire emotional machine stops getting fed. Because the push and pull was never only about love, it was about reaction. It was about your nervous system being pulled into a rhythm. They retreat, you rush in. They go quiet, you get louder. They become distant. You become desperate to bring the warmth back. And I need you to understand this. You weren't too much. You were responding to inconsistency. You were responding to mixed signals. You were responding to a door that kept opening just enough to keep your hope alive, then slamming shut the moment you tried to walk through it. The avoidant doesn't always mean to control you, but distance becomes a kind of control anyway, because it creates movement in you. Their silence creates your paragraphs. Their coldness creates your explaining. Their disappearing act creates your overthinking. You're checking, you're waiting, you're bargaining with yourself. Maybe if I say it softer, maybe if I don't ask for too much, maybe if I prove I'm safe, they'll finally stay. And that's the trap, because the more you chase, the more you confirm the very fear they carry. That closeness is pressure, that intimacy is demand, that love is something that will swallow them whole. So your chasing doesn't heal them, it scares them, and then they retreat more, and then you chase more, and you start to feel like love is a treadmill you can't step off without collapsing. Now here is where your calm step back becomes powerful, not dramatic, not bitter, not, I'm going to teach you a lesson, but calm. Calm is the difference between a boundary and a performance. Calm is you saying, without words, I'm not going to keep sprinting towards someone who keeps walking away. Calm is you removing yourself from the emotional tug-of war, not because you don't care, but because you care enough about yourself to stop bleeding in front of someone who keeps handing you a bandage instead of stopping the knife. Calm is you choosing peace over explanation, because you finally realize that the right person does not require a 12-step presentation to treat you with consistency. And when you do that, the old lever stops working. Distance only feels powerful when it produces an outcome, when it makes you panic, when it makes you chase, when it makes you drop your standards just to get a reply. But if you step back and your life remains steady, if you step back and your energy remains dignified, if you step back and you don't punish them, you don't beg them, you don't try to force a conversation out of a closed heart, then their usual move stops giving them the usual win. They're left with something they're not used to, silence that isn't angry, space that isn't needy, absence that isn't a threat, it's simply reality. And reality is confronting, because now they can't hide behind the story that you're too intense, or too emotional, or too demanding. Now they have to sit with the fact that you were willing to love them, but you are no longer willing to lose yourself to do it. This is why stepping back calmly often becomes the moment they start feeling you. Not when you're right there trying to convince them, but when you stop doing the work for both of you. Because as long as you're chasing, they never have to fully face the consequences of their distance. They can always assume you'll be there, always assume you'll smooth it over, always assume you'll accept the half effort, because your heart is good and your hope is stubborn. But calm distance removes that safety net. It doesn't scream, you hurt me. It quietly communicates, I won't keep living in a connection that only exists when I carry it. And when that happens, something in them often wakes up, not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped protecting them from the discomfort of their own choices. And I know what your mind does when you hear this. It says, but if I step back, what if they never come back? That fear is real and it's heavy, because part of you equates stepping back with losing. But listen to me, the goal was never to win. The goal was never to get someone back who only values you when you're disappearing. The goal is to get you back, your sleep back, your appetite back, your self-respect back, your laughter back, your ability to put your phone down without your chest tightening. Because if love requires you to abandon yourself, it isn't love that's saving you, it's love that's consuming you. So when you step back calmly, you're not withdrawing to punish them, you're withdrawing to protect your heart from the slow drip of uncertainty. You're saying, I will not turn my love into a negotiation. You're saying, I will not audition for consistency. You're saying, if you want access to me, it comes with responsibility, it comes with effort, it comes with emotional presence. And that is the moment the dynamic changes, because they can no longer rely on distance to keep you close. They can no longer pull away and expect you to chase. They can no longer create confusion and expect you to translate it into commitment. And if they do come back, the calm step back has already done something sacred inside you. It has reminded you that your love is not a tool for someone else to regulate their fear. Your love is not a reward for half presence. Your love is a gift, and gifts are not supposed to be thrown on the floor and picked up only when it's convenient. So if they return, you don't meet them with instant surrender, you meet them with grounded truth. You watch what they build, not what they say. You look for consistency, not intensity. You look for effort that lasts longer than a week. You look for someone who doesn't just miss you, but values you in a way that shows up, that stays, that doesn't disappear the moment intimacy asks them to grow. Because the calm step back is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Clear about what you deserve. Clear about how love should feel. Clear about the fact that real connection doesn't require you to chase someone into choosing you. And the most heart-touching part of all of this is that the moment you stop feeding the cycle, you stop bleeding for crumbs, you stop turning your tenderness into desperation, you finally feel your own strength again, quietly, steadily, like a light turning on in a room you forgot was yours, and you breathe like you've been holding your breath for far too long. Calm distance isn't punishment, it's self-respect, and self-respect is the language your nervous system has been begging you to speak. Because when you've been loving someone who feels safest at arm's length, you slowly start living in a state of emotional alertness. You don't even realize it at first. It becomes normal to you. You wake up and your first thought is them. You check your phone. You replay the last conversation. You analyze the tone. You measure your worth by the speed of their reply. You tell yourself you're being understanding. But what you're really doing is abandoning your own peace to keep the connection alive. And I need you to hear this gently but clearly. That is not love. That is survival mode wearing the costume of love. Love is meant to feel like a home, not like a test you can fail at any moment. Love is meant to calm you, not keep you on edge. So when you step back calmly, you're not being harsh, you're not being petty, you're not being too proud. You are finally telling your body, I do not have to earn basic consideration. You are finally telling your heart, I don't have to beg to be handled with care. And that is a kind of courage most people never develop, because it means you stop soothing the very person who keeps unsettling you. Calm distance is you refusing to perform pain for someone to take you seriously. It's you refusing to cry louder, explain harder, or prove your value through emotional labor. Because think about it. When you're in that anxious loop, you start believing that if you just say it the right way, they will finally understand. But an avoidant doesn't come closer because your words are perfect. They come closer when they feel safe, and safety does not come from you shrinking yourself. Safety comes from stability, and stability begins with you being stable inside yourself, not pulled around by someone else's mood. So calm distance becomes a boundary, not a weapon. A boundary says, this is what I will do to protect my well-being. A weapon says, this is what I will do to hurt you back. And I'm telling you, the most powerful thing you can ever do is step back without venom. Not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to stop turning your pain into a performance. You're strong enough to not send the paragraph. You're strong enough to not demand closure from someone who can't even sit in the room with their own emotions. You're strong enough to let their silence be their answer, and then let your life be your response. And here's the part that's going to hit you in the chest. Calm distance is not about them at all. It's about you returning to yourself. It's about you rebuilding trust with your own intuition, because your intuition has been whispering for a long time. This doesn't feel right. But you kept overriding it. You kept making excuses. You kept saying, they've been through a lot. They're scared. They're just stressed. They don't mean it. And maybe they don't mean it. But intention does not erase impact. Someone can be a good person and still be unsafe for your heart. Someone can be traumatized and still be inconsistent. Someone can cower and still not show up. Your heart doesn't heal from their good intentions. Your heart heals from consistent actions. So when you step back calmly, you stop negotiating with your own standards. You stop telling yourself that crumbs are a meal. You stop twisting your needs into something smaller so they can swallow it. You stop calling your desire for communication neediness when it's actually normal. You stop calling your need for reassurance too much when it's actually human. And you start recognizing that what you were asking for was not extraordinary. It was the bare minimum: clarity, consistency, effort, emotional presence. And if someone can't give you that, then stepping back is not a loss, it's a rescue. Now listen closely, because self-respect is not loud. Self-respect doesn't post quotes. It doesn't announce departures. It doesn't give ultimatums and then break them. Self-respect is quiet. It's you not answering the midnight text that only comes when they're lonely. It's you not taking a breadcrumb and calling it a comeback. It's you not reopening your heart just because they knocked, when they haven't built the emotional house required to live there. It's you saying, I'm not available for confusion anymore. And the moment you do that, your body begins to relax, because your body finally knows you're on your own side. And do you know what happens when you are on your own side? You become magnetic in a way you can't fake, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're no longer easy to lose. There is a dignity in someone who can love deeply and still walk away from what hurts them. There is a power in someone who can miss someone and still not reach for them if it costs their self-worth. There is a beauty in someone who can feel the ache and still choose the boundary. Because that boundary is not a wall, it's a gate, and gates open for those who have earned entry. This is why calm distance often triggers reflection in an avoidant. Because when you stop chasing, they lose the evidence that you will always be there to patch the cracks. And then they are forced to confront the question they fear most. What if I actually lose her? And if they care, that question stings. It makes them revisit moments they dismissed. It makes them feel the silence where your warmth used to be. It makes them recognize that you were not asking for perfection, you were asking for presence. But you must remember, your calm step back should never be a strategy. It should be a standard. It should be your promise to yourself that you will not abandon yourself again. Because if they come back, you don't return to the old version of you, the version that overgives, overexplains, overweights. You become the version that can say, softly but firmly, I'm open to love, but not to uncertainty. You become the version that requires effort to match words. You become the version that watches for consistency over time, not intensity in one moment. And yes, it may hurt, because stepping back calmly can feel like you're ripping out a piece of your own hope. But hope that survives on you tolerating pain is not hope, it's addiction to potential. And you deserve better than potential. You deserve someone who doesn't need the fear of losing you to finally treat you like you matter. You deserve love that does not demand self-betrayal. So let calm distance be your healing. Let it be your return. Let it be the moment you stop asking, how do I make them choose me? And you start living the truth, I choose me first. The moment you return to your life, friends, goals, routines, your body, your purpose, something shifts so deeply that even you can feel it in your chest, like air coming back into lungs that were breathing in half measures for far too long. Because when you are tangled in an avoidant dynamic, you don't just miss a person, you begin to miss yourself. Your days start shrinking around their moods, your happiness starts waiting for their replies, your confidence starts depending on whether they are warm or cold, present or distant. And without even realizing, you hand them the remote control to your inner world, and you call it love, when really, it is abandonment of your own life. So when you return to your life, you don't do it to prove something, you do it to heal something. You do it because your spirit is tired of living on pause. You do it because you were not born to sit by a phone and decode silence like it's a secret language. You were not born to carry the emotional weight of two people while someone else floats in and out whenever they feel overwhelmed. You were born to live, to laugh, to build, to grow, to be surrounded by people who don't make you question if you matter. Returning to your life is not a distraction, it is a decision. It is you saying, my life will not become smaller to fit someone's fear. It is you saying, I refuse to make my world revolve around someone who can't even stay present in it. And this decision is powerful because it changes what you represent. When you were waiting, you looked like someone who would accept crumbs, someone whose day could be turned upside down by a single text, someone who could be kept in a holding pattern with just enough attention to keep you hopeful. But when you return to your life, you become someone who is moving forward, someone who is not available for half love, someone who is not easily controlled by distance. And here's the truth that most people don't want to face. An avoidant often values what they cannot comfortably possess. When you are right there, fully available, fully chasing, fully explaining, you become predictable, and predictable feels safe, but it also feels like there is no consequence. They can withdraw and you will still be there. They can disappear and you will still care. They can give you a little and you will turn it into a lot. But when you return to your life, something changes. You are not waiting on the shelf anymore. You are not pausing your happiness. You are not staying emotionally parked outside their door. You are living. And living makes you real in a different way. Living makes you feel valuable. Living makes you feel like a person they can actually lose. Because you have to understand, people do not always appreciate the sun while it is shining. Sometimes they notice it when the warmth is gone. And when you return to your life, you stop being the constant warmth that they take for granted. Not because you become cold, but because you become busy building a life that doesn't depend on them. You start meeting friends, and you remember your laughter. You start focusing on your goals, and you remember your ambition. You start taking care of your body, and you remember your strength. You start building your routines, and you remember your stability. And the more you remember yourself, the less you beg to be remembered by someone else. This is why returning to your life can trigger reflection in them, because reflection needs space, and your constant presence often gives them a way to avoid looking at themselves. When you're chasing, they can blame the intensity. When you're pleading, they can call you needy. When you're explaining, they can claim they're overwhelmed. But when you're gone, peacefully, and you are not punishing them, you are not attacking them, you are simply not available in the old way, they are left with the silence that reflects their own choices back at them. They start to remember your kindness, your loyalty, your patience, the way you made life feel softer. And that's when the thought creeps in quietly. Maybe I misjudged her. Maybe I took her for granted. Maybe I didn't realize what I had. But listen carefully. Your return to life is not about making them miss you. It is about making you feel whole again. Because the deeper wound in these dynamics is not that they left. It's that you started leaving yourself. You stopped doing what made you feel alive. You stopped seeing the people who loved you. You stopped working on the dreams that were waiting for you. You stopped choosing yourself because you were busy choosing someone who couldn't fully choose you back. And that is a heartbreak that piles up quietly, day by day, until you don't recognize who you've become. So when you return to your life, you're not just filling time, you're rebuilding identity. You're teaching your nervous system that love is not the only source of safety, that you can create safety through routine, through friendships, through purpose, through self-care, through a life that is steady. You're learning to regulate your emotions without needing them to respond. You're learning that your peace does not have to be negotiated. You're learning that your happiness is not a hostage to someone else's fear. And the most emotional part of this is that you begin to glow again, not in a fake way, not in a look how fine I am way, but in a real way, a grounded way, a healed way. You stop looking for them in every notification, and you start looking forward to your own day. You stop measuring your worth by whether they call, and you start measuring your worth by how you show up for yourself. You stop waiting for permission to be loved, and you start loving your own life. Now, if they come back, and sometimes they do, they come back to a version of you that is not starving anymore. They come back to someone who is not easily hooked by a few sweet words. They come back to someone who can say, calmly, I care about you, but I care about myself too. They come back to someone who requires consistency, who requires effort, who requires real presence. And that is the point, because when you return to your life, you stop asking, how do I get them to stay? And you start living like someone who only allows what is healthy to stay. Your silence becomes powerful when it is peaceful, not angry, because peaceful silence doesn't beg, it doesn't threaten, it doesn't perform, it simply exists like a closed door that no longer swings open for chaos. Angry silence is still a conversation, it's still a rope tied between you and them, it's still hoping they will feel the cold and come running to warm it up. Peaceful silence is different. It is you putting the rope down. It is you stepping out of the ring. It is you saying, without words, I will not fight for a place in someone's life where I am treated as optional. And I know how hard that is, because when you care, you want to explain. When you love, you want to repair. When you're attached, you want to reach. Your fingers almost move on their own. Your heart starts writing messages before your mind can stop it. Your brain says, just send one more text. Just clarify. Just make sure they understand you're not leaving. You're just hurt. But this is where you have to be honest with yourself. How many times have you explained your pain to someone who heard you and still repeated the same behavior? How many times have you tried to communicate your needs to someone who nodded, promised, and then disappeared again the moment intimacy asked them to show up? At some point, words stop being the bridge, and they become the excuse you use to stay. Peaceful silence is not the absence of love, it is the presence of self-control. It is you refusing to let your emotions be dragged into a loop where you always end up smaller. It's you recognizing that your value does not increase because you can endure more. Your value was never in how much you could tolerate. Your value is in who you are, your warmth, your loyalty, your depth, your ability to love with your whole heart. And the tragedy is that people like you often think their gift is to keep loving even when it hurts. But the real gift is learning when to stop offering your heart to someone who keeps mishandling it. When your silence is peaceful, it changes the energy completely. Because now, they can't read you. They can't predict you. They can't trigger you into chasing them. They can't pull away and watch you panic. They can't do the half return, the little message, the miss you, and instantly get your full attention, your full heart, your full availability. Peaceful silence doesn't reward breadcrumbs. It doesn't jump at shadows. It doesn't react to confusion. It stays steady, and steadiness is what makes it powerful, because it forces the other person to sit with themselves, instead of using your reactions as a distraction. Think about how many times they have relied on your emotional responsiveness. They withdraw, you chase. They go cold, you get anxious. They act uncertain, you become reassuring. And it might not be malicious, but it becomes a dynamic, and dynamics create habits, and habits create expectations. They expect your heart to be the safety net under their inconsistency. They expect your love to cover the parts of them that refuse to grow. They expect your presence to remain constant, even when theirs is conditional. Peaceful silence breaks that expectation, not with cruelty but with consequence. Because silence that is angry still wants them to notice. Silence that is angry still needs a reaction. Silence that is angry is still tied to their attention. Peaceful silence is freedom. It is you reclaiming your attention, your mind, your breath, your day. It is you choosing not to be emotionally available to someone who is emotionally unavailable. It is you refusing to be on call for a person who only shows up when it suits them. And that choice is not small. It is a declaration. I am not a side character in my own life anymore. Now, does peaceful silence hurt? Yes, it can hurt like a withdrawal, because it is. You're withdrawing from the habit of reaching. You're withdrawing from the addiction of hope. You're withdrawing from the fantasy that if you just love harder, they'll become different. You're withdrawing from the comfort of at least having something, even if it's inconsistent. And the first days of peaceful silence can feel like you're walking through fog, because you're used to the drama, you're used to the highs and lows, you're used to the intensity. Calm can feel empty when you've been living in emotional noise. But this is where healing begins, in the quiet. In the space where you stop checking your phone every 5 minutes. In the moment you realize you can survive the uncertainty. In the day you laugh and you notice your body didn't tighten because you forgot about them for a second. In the hour you choose to do something for yourself instead of analyzing them. Peaceful silence gives you your life back, piece by piece, breath by breath. And that is the kind of power that doesn't depend on anyone else. And here's what's so important. Peaceful silence makes you undeniable. Not because you're trying to be mysterious, but because you become someone who cannot be controlled by emotional scarcity. Scarcity is the currency avoidant dynamics trade on. Scarcity of time, scarcity of reassurance, scarcity of clarity. When you stop panicking at scarcity, you stop being controlled by it. When you stop chasing, you stop signaling that they can withdraw and still keep you. When you stop reacting, you stop giving them the map to your nervous system. And suddenly, if they want access to you, they have to come differently. They have to come with effort. They have to come with consistency. They have to come with respect. But I need you to promise yourself something. Your silence is not a test. Your silence is not bait. Your silence is not a tool to make them regret. Your silence is your sanctuary. It is you rebuilding your relationship with yourself. It is you practicing the courage to sit with your own emotions without throwing them at someone who cannot hold them. It is you learning that you do not need immediate validation to be okay. You do not need closure from someone who keeps running. You do not need their response to confirm your worth. Your worth is not a question. So if they come back, and sometimes they do, they come back because peaceful silence creates a mirror. It shows them what life looks like without your constant presence. It shows them the consequence of taking you for granted. It shows them that you are not just an option they could pause and resume. But whether they come back or not, peaceful silence has already done its work. It has returned you to yourself. And that is the most heart-touching truth of all, that the moment you stop fighting to be chosen, you start living like you are already enough.